Hi guys, this is Mike, and this will be a shootout between two 7-string guitars whose names are actually quite a mouthful. So if I screw this up, I will have to fix it in post, but let's see. So in my right hand I'm holding the PRS SE for Student Edition Mark Holcomb 7 HB for Holcomb Burst. And in my left hand I'm holding the ESP LTD M-1007 HT BP. Well, thank God I didn't screw this up. But seriously, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's actually start with the specs of these guitars and let's actually start rating them.
So, the Mark Holcomb is the cheaper of the two, but it's also made in Indonesia as opposed to Korea. We have a mahogany body on the PRS and an elder one on the LTD. Both guitars have a 3-piece maple neck and a fretboard made out of ebony, but besides that, the necks are actually quite different. We do have a 26.5-inch scale on the PRS, which is almost baritone territory, while the LTD comes with the Fender scale of 25.5. Also, both the neck shapes and the fingerboard radius are different, which have direct consequences on playability, but we'll talk about that later. We have locking tuners on the LTD and stainless steel frets. Neither of those we have on the PRS. Also on the LTD there is a real hipshot bridge, while on the PRS we have a PRS designed bridge. Quality pickups are existent on both guitars, but bear in mind one set is active and one is passive. We do have coil split on both guitars, but they do work differently on the LTD. Instead of giving you a single coil-like sound, the quote coil split on the Fishman Fluence Modern pickups gives you basically a second sound option, one that is supposed to sound more like passive pickups. Last but not least, the PRS comes with a gig bag, which is a nice bonus, but if you really want to use it on the road, personally, I would invest in a good case.
So let's start with the rating, and based on what we heard of the LTD and its quality parts, including locking tuners, stainless steel frets and a real hipshot bridge, I'm rating this guitar in the first category, features, the top score, 5 stars. On the PRS, however, I'm kinda missing all those things, which is especially annoying if you consider that this is a guitar that is almost exactly $1,000 US. So let's give the PRS 3.5 stars in this category, and the half star is for the gig bag alone. Okay, so next up is the factory setup. I will tell you about the factory setup and I will rate it, but I will not consider this rating for the final rating, because I feel that might be a little bit unfair.
Right from the get-go, both guitars have pretty much the same problems. So the good thing is, on both guitars the string height / string action was pretty nice and low, and intonation on both guitars was pretty good. I know that former models of the PRS Mark Holcomb had a bad, cheap nut that was white, I believe, and that a lot of people complained about and blamed for bad intonation. But on this 2022 model we have a black nut of unknown origin. They don't say anything what brand it is, but I can say it holds the tuning, and tuning as well seems very stable and calm, just like on the LTD. Having said that, both guitars have fret noise, especially on the 3 lowest strings. It is not noticeable when you play on high gain settings, but you can definitely hear it, and you will hear it on the clean samples later on that I recorded.
Okay, so to make this short, we have pretty equal performance here in this category, in the factory setup category. Both guitars have good intonation and nice and low string action, but we also have fret noise on both guitars on the first 3 strings. So let's give both guitars the same rating here, 3.5 stars.
But let's talk about something more positive, build quality. So here I have good news. Not considering the materials used, like stainless steel frets on one guitar and nickel frets on the other, I can say both guitars are built beautifully. For this category I like to look at things in a really close-up manner, and I looked and checked, but thankfully on neither guitars I was able to find like scratches or ugly bindings or what have you. So from the get-go, both guitars seem to be built to a high quality standard. However, I quickly encountered a problem on the PRS. After I guess maybe 2 or 3 hours of play, I suddenly noticed that the tone knob on the PRS got pretty loose, and soon after the bridge pickup stopped working for good. It just wouldn't produce any sounds and stayed dead quiet. So I removed the back plate, tried to use some contact spray, but to no avail, and then suddenly I discovered that a pickup cable had disconnected itself from the push-pull pot. After 2 or 3 hours of play and careful handling. So that was a great day. I basically had to solder the cable back on the pot, which is great fun in a cavity as cramped as this one. Now everything seems to work as intended, but it was one of those days where you just love to be a small YouTuber. Which reminds me,
guys, as you can see, a lot of blood, sweat and tears goes into the making of these videos, and I guess I would have stopped a long time ago if not for comments like this, or this. So please show some love, support the channel, subscribe to it, leave a comment below and like this video. And to answer your question, Conebone69, yes, I will definitely marry you.
Anyways, back to the rating. So, except for the small mishap with the bridge pickup, which I will not consider for the rating on the PRS because I reckon this is the exception and not the rule, I can say the build quality on both guitars is very good. Although not perfect. We do have small areas on both guitars that are not as attractive, like this small area here on the LTD or that one on the PRS. Coincidentally, the same spot as on the LTD, the bottom side of the neck near the neck joint. But considering the price of both guitars, it's still very good. So both guitars get 4.5 stars in this category, and to be completely honest, I have yet to see a guitar that would be a perfect 5.
Okay guys, so these were the first 3 rating categories, and we'll continue with the rating after the sound samples. So I recorded both clean and highly distorted samples on both guitars, on all pickups and all pickup configurations, both totally dry and with effects. So enjoy the sound samples, and after that we will talk about playability, sound and my overall score, my personal opinion, my final opinion on these instruments. So stay tuned, hope you like the samples, see ya. Okay guys, welcome back. I hope you like the samples. Now let's continue with the rating of these guitars and, to be more precise, the playability on them. So what is strange is I always liked wide and thin necks on my guitars, and I like my fingerboards to be almost straight. And so in theory the PRS Mark Holcomb with its wide and thin neck shape and its 20-inch radius should be right up my alley. But spoiler alert, I guess, I am working on a 6-string guitar shootout as well in the moment. Subscribe and hit the notification bell, it will be interesting. And I have a PRS Mark Holcomb 6-string there, and I absolutely love the neck on that guitar. But for some reason on the 7-string, this neck just feels so massive. It's like they took a standard C and they broadened or widened it to a flat D, I guess, and yeah, it just feels so massive. Plus, and I noticed that on the 6-string Mark Holcomb as well, this is supposed to be a satin finish on the neck, on the back of the neck here, but I guess it's the stickiest satin finish that I ever encountered.
Well, actually, that is not quite true. Let me explain. I have a 20-year-old Epiphone, which I love dearly. It was actually my very first guitar, plus I have upgraded and modded it quite a bit over the years. And one of the things that I did was, I took some steel wool and gently rubbed off the first layer of polyurethane off of the back. It had this thick layer of lacquer basically that got quite sticky after a time, and I rubbed it off. And now it basically has a neck that lives in the dimension between being a little bit sticky and having a satin feel. And guess what? The PRS feels exactly the same. It feels exactly the same. And it even shows the same signs of behavior, like how your fingerprints are visible on the neck, how you can see the traces of grease there. I mean, that can't be a coincidence, right? So in short, this neck feels really massive, plus it's a little bit sticky. So yeah, I'll give it 3.5 stars for playability. Although I do have to admit that things like that are highly subjective. This neck could as well be a perfect 5 for you.
And then we have the LTD, which has a real satin finish on the back of the neck, plus it's considerably thinner than the PRS. And I mean, it's not as thin as, say, an Ibanez Wizard neck, which in my opinion is ridiculous, but it's considerably thinner than the PRS. And you don't have all this mess in your hand, and I guess that's why you have better access, at least I do, to all the frets. And actually it's quite baffling to me how I can like the 6-string version of the Mark Holcomb so much, but have issues or problems with it when it's the 7-string. It shouldn't be that much of a difference, but it is. Just the feeling of it, you know. So I really like this neck. Playability is much better for me on the LTD, and so that's 4.5 stars in this category. And then we have the sound, and what differences we have there. So first of all, and you didn't hear this in the sound samples, the LTD is considerably louder than the PRS. Right, so I had, on all the samples that I recorded, I had to put the output on my Kemper lower a couple of decibel than the PRS. But then it's also noisier, which was a surprise to me because I always thought that active pickups are that silent. Well, these are not, especially it seems when you sit in front of your PC or your display. But speaking about the sound itself, to make it short, I really love the sound of the Seymour Duncan Alpha and Omega combo in the PRS. I think it just sounds huge. It has a big low end, but never flubby or something. It has very focused, very pushy mids, and never shrill, never harsh sounding highs. It's a really nice mix. They did a great job on them, I think. So I really love the sound of these pickups. They are so much fun to play. They sound so alive, so dynamic. They sound very brutal if you want them to sound brutal, but they can also sound very sweet if you play on a clean setting. The Fishmans, on the other hand, sound totally different, in my opinion, than the Duncans. They don't sound as alive, as dynamic. They don't sound as fat. They sound more controlled, more focused, more compressed even. Having said that, I don't feel that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if you just play for yourself, you know, just noodling around for yourself, the Duncans are the way to go. They're just so much fun to play. You know, you feel every thump, every jint, everything. So that's great, and you do lose a little bit of low end on the LTD, on the Fishmans. But when you add drums and bass to the equation, I actually feel that the LTD, the Fishmans, find their place in the mix easier. You don't have to use so much compression or no compression at all. They just fit better. Basically, if there's one word to describe the Fishmans, I feel it would be tight. They're just so tight, right? That's why I said they don't seem as alive, but they're tight, right? And so I have a hard time rating these two very different sounds, in my opinion. I like the clean sound of the Duncans way more than on the LTD. I feel the Fishmans have these high frequencies that can sound a little bit harsh when you have the tone control all the way up, as I did on the clean samples. So I have a really hard time rating these two because I feel they sound so different and I wouldn't know which is better, right? The Duncans definitely sound fatter and are more fun to play on your own, but I feel the Fishmans are just tighter and more focused. And speaking about the two sound modes on there, the active mode and the passive mode, I actually do like the passive mode more. It gives you actually a more passive feeling. You get more low end, but also more high end, which is strange. Yeah, so I think different tools for different purposes. I have a hard time actually rating these two very different sounds. And so I think for fairness sake, I'm going to give them both 4 stars. I think they both sound great. I also do wonder how much influence the tone wood and the different neck scale has on the PRS sound. We have a different neck scale. We have 26.5 inches, which is almost baritone. We have thicker strings for that, and we have mahogany wood on the body and on the neck, so it's a darker sounding wood, right? I wonder how these pickups would sound in the LTD, and I think I'll find out sometime in the future, because I guess I will order the 7-string versions of the Alpha and the Omega. If you want to see that, subscribe and hit the notification bell. It will be interesting. So yeah, 4 stars it is for both guitars in the sound category.
Okay guys, so if we add all the stars, except as mentioned before, the ones from the factory setup category, and divide them by 4, we get 3.875 on the PRS, which we generously round up to 4 stars, and on the LTD we get exactly 18 stars. Divided by 4 equals 4.5 stars. And so that's the end result of my very scientific testing.
Yeah guys, that was basically the math side of things, but here's now my personal opinion on these instruments. And the first thing I'm going to say, I realize is highly subjective and definitely up for debate. But I just love the way the LTD looks. You can call it a finish, you can call it wood grain, whatever you want to call it. I just think this instrument is beautiful. And to be honest, I absolutely hate the way the PRS looks. Sorry to Mark and sorry to all the fans, but I just feel it looks dated. It looks like something straight out of the 90s. Plus, the LTD is made in Korea as opposed to Indonesia. It has the way better specs, and for me, the playability is also way better than on the PRS. So I'm definitely going to keep the LTD, and the only question that I have is, what am I going to do with the pickups? Because while the Fishmans are pretty good, I still want to see how the Seymour Duncan sound in that guitar. So I'll try that out sometimes in the future. But guys, let me know what you think about the sound, especially of these guitars. Leave a comment in the comment section. Did you hear something maybe that I didn't? Did I miss something? Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. There's a lot of cool stuff coming up, including the aforementioned 6-string Shootout. I wish you a great day, have a good one, bye.
With 2 eyes.